Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We're live to you on from our global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, just to quickly remind you, that's happening right about now is the 22nd Nigeria Economic Summit in the nation's capital, Abuja, and it has as its theme, Made in Nigeria. Of course, conversations will be all about how to get Nigeria on a stable, long-term path, focusing on different areas. They've got about 7 plenary sessions and, of course, various other breakout sessions, and you can actually follow this program along with us. You can tweet your questions at us because we'll be talking about some of the issues that may likely be raised at this particular summit this year. I'll be joined in a moment by the Director General, Nigeria Textile Manufacturers Association, as we take a look at buying made in Nigeria by Nigerians. Of course, just to also quickly remind you, we've got our poll question for the week. Which products made in Nigeria by Nigerians do you use or have you given as a gift? So we've got hashtag clothes, hashtag hair accessories, hashtag footwear, slippers and shoes, bathroom supplies, or hashtag none. You can tweet at BizMorning or send an email to businessmorning@channelstv.com. Of course, we've already started getting some votes and responses to this particular question. Some people say they've actually used none, but well, that actually is a subject for debate. But of course, don't forget, you can send us your own answers using any of those platforms, and let's get your thoughts on it. So let's quickly take a look also at some energy stocks that we track here on the program, about 7 of them that we track for you. So at the end of the week just ended, Corn Oil, Forte Oil, Mobil, MRS, Seplat and Total were unchanged. That's the last trading day of the week just ended. And you can see the various closing price there. The only movement, and it was a green shoot, was recorded by Owando. That notched up 1.50%. So for the week ended, the index came in at minus 1.16. Year to date is at 6.85. Price to earnings 50.1 and dividend yield at 1.8%. So we're turning our attention to investing in Islamic bonds. Now, very recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria set commercial banks' investment in Islamic bonds issued by state governments to 10% of the total amount on offer and fixed a maximum tenor of 10 years for the bonds. The CBN said it considered the need to issue the guidelines to enhance the quality of Sukuk instruments and to grant status at its discount window as well as for banks' liquidity ratio. Now, this is one investment option, investment asset that I know that a lot of people have been talking about that Nigeria should actually weigh in on. And so we have the Assistant Director of the Securities and Exchange Commission, who is also the head of operations, here with us in the studios to talk more about this, Mrs. Olubukola Rufai. Thank you so much, Olubukola, for coming on the program this morning.
You're welcome, Harriet. Good morning.
Now, the emergence of Sukuk has definitely been one of the most significant developments in capital markets in recent years, especially as it gives investors a share of an asset alongside with the commiserate cash flows and the risk. But this form of investment has not really been tapped into here in Nigeria. What seems to be the issue?
Thank you, Harriet. Sukuk is certainly a very viable alternative for investments in Nigeria. We've had only one so far since we developed the rules for Sukuk in 2013, which was the State of Osun Sukuk. The reason for that is, well, it's new, so people are still learning about it. We also observe that some people have a bias against investing in Sukuks because they perceive it to be an Islamic product. And we have engaged a number of people. We have been involved in a number of public enlightenment programs, sensitizing people that although Sukuks are Islamic bonds based on Sharia principles, they're really not investments for Muslims alone. And so we've had countries which are essentially non-Islamic countries, issue Sukuks. For instance, the UK, Luxembourg, South Africa, and even Hong Kong have issued Sukuks successfully. And in all those countries, most of their Sukuks were actually oversubscribed. So there's really nothing to worry about. I think people just need to have a good grasp of it. One other thing was that we were waiting on CBN, and we were working with CBN and waiting on them to approve the guidelines for the liquidity asset status for sukuks to enable financial institutions invest more in sukuks. And that graciously has been approved by the CBN last week.
So now that that has happened, what do you think is going to, how do you think the market is going to be? Do you think there'll be more interest now in raising sukuk bonds, maybe from the state or even private levels?
Oh, I must say that this is something that the DG and the Capital Market Committee has been working on for quite some time, especially since last year when we started the 10-year master plan. Certainly, the liquid asset status now conferred on sukuks will engender more investments in sukuks, especially by the financial institutions who can now include sukuk in the computation of their liquid assets ratios, liquidity ratios. And also, it enables them to access the discount window, even with sukuks as the security instrument for that window. Again, there's a bit of risk weight attached to it, which is fair enough. It's a 20% risk weight attached to sukuks, state government sukuks now, for computation of capital adequacy ratios of banks. And I think these will engender more investments by the banks. It will also open up the investments to foreign investors who will be more comfortable seeing our financial institutions invest in such instruments. And we expect that it will also foster more financial inclusion, especially on the path of those who have apathy towards interest-bearing instruments.
So if, you know, one goes ahead to want to raise a sukuk bond, for instance, talk to us about the regulatory framework for sukuk. Is it different from how the other guidelines are for instance, raising FGN bonds or state bonds for that matter?
Now, there are a lot of similarities in the guidelines for sukuk and the conventional state government bonds. The essential difference is that the sukuk is backed by Sharia principles, which prohibits interest. It also prohibits excessive speculation, especially gambling. It also prohibits investments in dangerous weapons, nuclear weapons, for instance. But more importantly, the sukuks are asset-backed instruments or project-based instruments. In other words, if a sukuk is raised by an issuer, it's raised because there is a focus on developing infrastructure. For instance, the sukuk that we have had in Nigeria is the one by the state of Osun, which was raised in 2013, just after we developed the rules on sukuk. The state actually intended to raise just 10 billion naira and ended up raising 11.4 billion naira. So it was oversubscribed. And that means that there are some people who really understand the usefulness of sukuk and accept it as a mode of investment. So sukuks are here to stay, and we can only encourage issuers to issue more sukuks as an alternative source. Nigeria, for instance, needs to finance more infrastructure in the country. We have had conventional bonds as the major source of financing, and the sukuk has now come to stay as an alternative to the conventional bonds. In other words, you can now tie investments to specific assets.
Well, you see, it's all good and well that the state of Osun actually had a very successful sukuk issuance, but it's been 3 years. That's a lot of time, and if I do say so myself, that's an indictment that it's only one state that has actually taken that brave step of issuing a sukuk bond. It says a lot.
I agree with you. It does say a lot, and I must say that it might just be because of the low level of understanding regarding sukuks, and the Commission has taken it upon itself to enlighten the public. We've had engagements with issuers, encouraging them to issue sukuks, and of course to dissuade people from believing that it's simply an Islamic instrument. So although the governor of Osun State is a Muslim, I don't think he issued sukuk just because he's a Muslim. He saw it as an alternative, a viable alternative source of financing projects. And according to him, he actually said the cost of the sukuk was cheaper for him. So it's a viable alternative. We have been engaging, like I said, various issuers. We've had roundtables in Kano, in Sokoto, and in Lagos. We've attended a number of fora where we have discussed sukuk. We've actually also engaged the DMO, and they understand now that there's need to issue a sovereign sukuk, which means different from the conventional federal government bonds. We're looking forward to having a sovereign sukuk issuance, so that at least there is more acceptance by the Nigerian populace, and then we can also have more foreign direct investments in sukuk, especially from the Middle East, where they seek to invest in non-interest products.
So what's the
like
progress
Sukuk.
on that one? How soon would that be issued?
Well, we have sent in our concept notes, which will serve as a framework for the sovereign issuance of Sukuk to the DMO. And work is going on it. We're hopeful that sometime next year, the Sukuk will be issued.
It seems as if a lot of things is based on hope. But now, talk to us a little bit. The market has been familiar with the same type of instruments, FGN bonds, bank bonds, state bonds. Will Sukuk diversify the products and asset class, for instance?
Certainly. It's an alternative asset class for issuers and for investors as well. We all know that we've had significant investments in federal government and state government bonds. We've also had, people are also pretty familiar with investments in equity. For any capital market to grow, you talk of growth in terms of depth of the market and in terms of breadth. So depth in terms of liquidity and breadth in terms of product offering. So the Sukuk will enable us to increase the breadth of the market because it's another asset class. And in terms of debt, it brings about more liquidity. So for instance, the liquidity status already granted by CBN will encourage the banks to invest more. And it will also encourage issuers to come to the market knowing that the investor base has now increased. And of course, when the banks begin to invest, we expect that other financial market participants like the PFAs and insurance companies will also join suit and begin to invest more in Sukuks. So it's really going to open up the avenue for investments in Sukuks.
So in opening up this avenue, how would this new PENCOM and NICOM guidelines further assist the development of the market?
Now, the multi-fund structure of the PENCOM is expected to authorize PFAs to invest in Sukuks. So we expect significant investments coming up from there, and we've engaged the PENCOM on this, and we're very certain that the guidelines will be approved pretty soon. With respect to NICOM, we know that insurance companies who engage in takaful insurance, that's Islamic insurance, already are investing in Sukuks, but we're working towards ensuring that it's insurance companies as a whole, not necessarily those doing takaful. We expect that insurance companies as a whole accept these as a means of investments.
Okay, so
just like any other bond.
Olubukanla, hold on to your thoughts and we'll come back and finish up this conversation. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Olubukanla, who is an Assistant Director at the Securities and Exchange Commission and Head of Operations, will be still here with me when I return in just a moment. Stay with us.